Hi, boys and girls. So, I am reading you our last story coming from second grade. The title is called Freckle Juice. It's by Judy Blume, and she's an author that I really, really like. And she's from New Jersey, and she has lots of other books. So, if you like Freckle Juice, you should find one and read one this summer. So, Freckle Juice by Judy Blume. Chapter 1. Andrew Marcus wanted freckles. Nicky Lane had freckles. He had about 1,000,000 of them. They covered his face, his ears, and the back of his neck. Andrew didn't have any freckles. He had 2 warts on his finger, but that didn't do him any good at all. If he had freckles like Nicky, his mother would never know if his neck was dirty. So he wouldn't have to wash, and then he'd never be late for school. Andrew had plenty of time to look at Nicky's freckles. He sat right behind him in class. Once he even tried to count them, but when he got to 86, Miss Kelly yelled, "Andrew, are you paying attention?" "Yes, Miss Kelly," Andrew said. "Good, Andrew. I'm glad to hear that. Now, will you please pick up your chair and join our reading group? We're all waiting for you." Andrew stood up in a hurry. His reading group giggled, especially Sharon. He couldn't stand that Sharon. She thought she knew everything. He picked up his chair and carried it to the corner where his reading group sat. "You may begin, Andrew," Miss Kelly said. "Page 64." Andrew turned the pages in his book. 64, 64. He couldn't find it. The pages stuck together. Why did Miss Kelly have to pick on him? Everybody else already had their books open to the right page. Sharon was giggling. She covered her mouth to keep in the noise, but Andrew knew what was going on. He finally found page 64, right where it was supposed to be, between pages 63 and 65. If he had his own freckles, he wouldn't have to count Nicky Lane's. Then he'd hear Miss Kelly when she called reading groups, and nobody would laugh at him. Later the bell rang. Andrew poked Nicky Lane. "What do you want?" Nicky asked, turning around. "I was wondering about your freckles," Andrew said. "Oh, yeah? What about 'em?" Andrew felt kind of silly. "Well, how did you get them?" "What do you mean, how?" "You get born with them, that's how." Andrew thought that's what Nicky would say. Some help he was. "Line up, boys and girls," Miss Kelly said. "Time to go home now. Sharon, you may lead the girls. Andrew, you may lead the boys." Some luck. Just when he got to be the leader, he had to stand next to Sharon. When they were in line, Sharon whispered to Andrew, "Psst, I know how to get them." "How to get what?" Andrew asked. "Freckles," Sharon said. "Who asked you?" "I heard you asked Nicky about this." Sharon ran her tongue along her teeth. She was always doing that. "Do you want to know how to get 'em?" Sharon asked. "Maybe," Andrew told her. "It'll cost you 50 cents. I have a secret recipe for freckle juice," Sharon whispered. "A secret recipe?" "Uh-huh." Sharon's tongue reminded Andrew of a frog catching flies. He wondered if Sharon ever got a mouthful of bugs when she opened her mouth and wiggled her tongue around. Andrew inspected Sharon's face. "You don't even have freckles," he said. "Look close," Sharon said. "I've got 6 on my nose." "Big deal. A lot of good 6 will do. You can get as many as you want. 6 was enough for me. It depends on how much freckle juice you want to drink." Andrew didn't believe Sharon for a minute. Not 1 minute. There is no such thing as freckle juice. Andrew had never heard of it before. So let's stop and think about who we've met in this story. We've met Andrew and Nicky and Sharon and Miss Kelly, and we know that Andrew wants freckles so that he doesn't have to wash, and his mom will think that he's clean. And we know Nicky Lane has freckles, and we know that Sharon has freckles, but she also has a secret recipe for freckle juice. Do you think it'll work? Do you think Andrew's going to ask Sharon for the recipe? Do you remember how much the recipe was? Chapter 2. That night, Andrew had trouble sleeping. He kept thinking about freckle juice. Maybe the reason no one in his family had freckles because no one knew the secret recipe. If they never ever heard of freckle juice, Then how could they have any freckles? It figured. Andrew didn't like the idea of paying Sharon for anything, and 50 cents was a lot of money. It was 5 whole weeks of allowance. But he decided that if Sharon's recipe didn't work, he'd ask for his money back. It was easy. The next morning, Andrew turned the combination of his safe bank to just the right numbers. 4 on top and 0 on the bottom. He took out 5 dimes. You know how much 5 dimes is worth? 50 cents or 2 quarters. He wrapped them in a tissue and stuffed the whole thing in his pocket. He didn't have time to wash his ears or neck or anything. He wanted to see Sharon before the bell rang. Bye, Mom, Andrew called. Andrew Marcus, wait a minute. His mother hurried over to him. She almost tripped on her long wardrobe. The curlers in her hair scratched Andrew's face as she checked his ears and neck. Please, Mom, can we just skip it this once? Andrew begged. Mrs. Marcus stepped away from Andrew. She pointed a finger at him. Okay, she said. I'll let you go this time, but tomorrow I'm looking again. And Andrew, zip up your pants. Andrew looked down. Zippers were a pain. This afternoon, when you come home, I'll be next door. Mrs. Burrows invited me over to play cards. You come get the key from me, okay? Sure, Mom, okay. Andrew raced to school. He could hardly wait to see the secret recipe. First, he'd look at it, and if it didn't seem any good, he just wouldn't pay. Sharon was already at her desk when Andrew arrived. He went right over to her. Did you bring it? He asked. Bring what? Sharon opened her eyes real wide. You know what? The secret recipe for freckle juice. Oh, that. I have it right here. Sharon patted her pocket. Well, let's see it. Do you have the 50 cents? Sharon asked. Sure, right here. Andrew patted his pocket. I'm not going to show it to you until you pay, Sharon said. Andrew shook his head. Oh, no. First, I want to see it. Sorry, Andrew. A deal's a deal. Sharon opened a book and pretended to read. Andrew Marcus, Miss Kelly said, will you please sit down? The second bell just rang. This morning we'll begin with arithmetic. Arithmetic's another word for math. Nikki, please pass out the yellow paper. When you get your paper, begin working on the problems on the board. Andrew went to his seat. Then he took the tissue with the 5 dimes out of his pocket. He held it near the floor and aimed it towards Sharon. Sharon sat in the next row. Sharon stuck out her foot and stepped on the tissue. Then she slid it over until she could reach it with her hands. She bent down and picked it up. Miss Kelly didn't notice. Sharon counted the 5 dimes. Then she took a piece of folded up white paper out of her pocket and threw it to Andrew. It landed in the middle of the aisle. Andrew leaned way over to pick it up, but he lost his balance and fell off his chair. Everybody laughed except Andrew and Miss Kelly. Miss Kelly sighed. Oh, Andrew, what are you up to now? Please bring that note to me, please. Andrew picked up the secret recipe. He didn't even have a chance to see it. It wasn't fair. It cost him 50 cents for nothing. He handed it to Miss Kelly. She read it. Then she looked up at him. Andrew, you may have this back at 3:00. She put it in her desk. I don't want this to happen again. Do you understand? Yes, Miss Kelly, Andrew mumbled. Good. Now let's get that arithmetic done. Miss Kelly wasn't bad. Andrew decided she could have ripped up the recipe or sent him to the principal's office or even made him stand outside in the hall by himself. Andrew could hardly wait for 3:00 to come. He didn't bother counting Nicky Lane's freckles. Soon he'd have his own. When the second bell finally rang and the class marched down the hall, Andrew went up to Miss Kelly. She held the piece of white paper and waved it at him. Here's your note, Andrew. I have the feeling it's important to you, but from now on you must pay attention in class. Andrew took the recipe from Miss Kelly. After tomorrow, I won't have any trouble paying attention, he promised. Just you wait, Miss Kelly. I won't have any trouble at all. That's the end of chapter 2. Think back about what happened in chapter 2. Andrew decided to pay Sharon for the recipe, but he almost got caught picking it up, but Miss Kelly gave it back to him. Do you think he's going to use the recipe? Do you think it will work? I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow.